Welcome to YearZeroVlogs. At the end of the year, I will leave academia, starting a new life. Come join me on memory lane. So far, I went to all the places that I wanted to remember. I went to my kindergarten, to my elementary school, to my high school, then to my university. And well, I planned to travel to Sweden, but it didn't happen this summer. So instead of going there in person, which would have been nice, I ordered some Swedish foods and I will prepare a Swedish feast for myself. And while I have this Swedish feast, I will talk about the time in Sweden, which was my second postdoc. Remember, I studied biochemistry and then I did a PhD thesis at the Max Planck Institute. And I went to Sweden because the choice of the PI, so we knew each other before, we were collaboration partners, and the place came kind of coincidental with his choice of where he wanted to establish his lab. But in the end, I was very happy with the choice and with 3.5 years spent in northern Sweden, close to the polar circle. The experiences that my husband and I made living there, fully immersing ourselves in the culture, were awesome. I noticed what is important in life for me and I made some decisions about the future of my academic career. Yeah, I would be happy if you join me now. Let's go to the kitchen and prepare the Swedish feast. It's a bit midsummer associated, so there will be some salmon and eggs and a little bit of Swedish extras. And then I will talk about different things that come to mind when I remember my time in Sweden. I remember very well when I harvested my first small radishes in the garden, because the special feature of my postdoc stay abroad in Sweden was that I didn't go to a big city. I wasn't in Gothenburg or Stockholm for my postdoc. I went to northern Sweden, to Umeå, and moreover I chose not to live in an apartment in the city, but to rent houses. And I didn't do this alone, I went with my husband. So we rented houses, and I say houses because renting is very unusual in Sweden, as most of you know who have watched other videos of people talking about staying in Sweden for their postdoc. So we didn't stay in one location, we had to switch locations. We could experience not only being abroad in a northern Scandinavian country, but also enjoying the nature and being really outside of the city by ourselves, enjoying country life, enjoying living in houses. And once even the house came with a cat, which we also rented for a year. We took care of her and she was very sweet.
But wait, how did we even get there? Let me tell you the story of our drive to Sweden by car. The trip started in August 2014 on the German Autobahn. We left Hamburg behind us, were looking forward to see different countries, and we were in Denmark, driving through Denmark in one day, and then there came a few bridges that we had to cross, and the biggest one is the very famous Öresund Bridge. It's a very cool feeling to drive by this bridge and to see the ocean below. And then already after a few hours drive we were in Sweden. The Swedish streets were a little different. There was much less traffic than we experienced in Germany, and we made a little stopover when we then finally reached the Botnian Sea, and I had my first encounter with the Swedish mosquitoes. one should not underestimate those in the beautiful Swedish woods. This is the first house we rented. It was really cool, modern interior, very pretty place to be. And the first weeks that we stayed in Sweden, we could enjoy a little bit of cooking and baking and just to live and enjoy the late summer of 2014. Summer ended with a little bit of rain and changing weathers. I was still very happy to be in Sweden for my postdoc, and I prepared everything for work. We used the time to explore the woods around the house and found a lot of good spots for picking blueberries. We also enjoyed going to the Botnian Sea and being there, enjoying the good air, and there was also a lake nearby the house. And then it was time to really pick some blueberries and store some for winter, and some went into muffins. Luckily, we had Swedish neighbors that took us on a boat trip so we could explore real Swedish life. I didn't catch any fish, but again in the woods we found a lot of different types of moss, and it was really exciting to see how nature changed from summer into autumn. And this is the city I did my postdoc in. It's Umeå, close to the polar circle. And I found a little virtual campus tour online. It's produced by Umeå University. Please check out the original source for the full-length video. These are the places where I have been. The natural sciences buildings are clustered. The campus is really pretty. The biology building, and next there is the big aula, Biologica. And then we arrive at the building where I worked 3.5 years, the KBC building. The campus is not only pretty, it has a lot of possibility for having a nice lunch break, and in the center of the campus there is the campus pond. A very nice place to be, study and do a postdoc.
In a lot of videos, people will say that living in Sweden is very expensive because the food is expensive. I would say it depends a bit on how you live. Since I left Sweden, it's 9 years ago, so things also changed. However, how we lived was that we went to the supermarket once every 2 weeks or once a month because it was quite far away, and we bought the staples and we cooked every day. With these basic foods, we did not feel that there was a big difference. I think the selection that we got was very good. I craved good bread, and with good bread I mean German bread. And then what do? Well, you start baking yourself, and that's what I also did. Yeah, food and drink was very important, and I have very good memories about how we fed ourselves by cooking and baking a lot and enjoying the new culture and everything they have to offer. Yeah, tastes good.
Food became less about convenience and more about enjoying life, caring and experimenting also. It was just awesome coming home after a long day at work in the darkness and having a self-made warm dinner on the table. My husband cooked for me, he took care of the household while we were in Sweden, and this was very luxurious and awesome. And on the weekends I could explore my baking passion, and we tried a lot of things, foraged berries and mushrooms from the woods surrounding the houses we rented, and it was just nice. The simple local ingredients gave a surprisingly strong sense of grounding. It was a great feeling to have a filled pantry with all the staples, and we even had a meal plan for some weeks, and this gave us tremendous freedom throughout the day for doing other things.
As we rented houses, I could also have a sneak peek into Swedish interior design, which I just love. At the time, I discovered this company who makes this fabric, Arvidsons textil, and I swore to myself that if I would ever go back to Germany and be able to furnish a house, then I would definitely have curtains with this type of fabric. And here it is. birds on birch trees.
There is something about Swedish design, like these fabric patterns, that reduces noise. Although it's a pattern and it seems loud, it is not. It's visually and mentally calming. That's how I feel about that. I didn't realize how much my environment, my home decor affects my ability to think clearly until I lived in those Swedish houses that were furnished and decorated by the owners. I noticed that furnishing a house including such busy patterns, it is important to really have less clutter and more focus. So the curtains here are the centerpieces of attention. The table is wood, the table foot is like metal fitting to the stove. Everything fits to a muted and natural color palette. The walls are on purpose left white. In summer and spring I can have these curtains with the björkdungen pattern with the birds on birch trees, and in winter I can exchange them for the winterdungen. This is a pattern of birch trees without the leaves, and the birds are bullfinches, a typical Swedish bird that really was everywhere around the house in the garden. And I remember those moments of autumn very fondly when they came, and we also had a little bird feeding station to watch them. Already before Sweden I liked nice things around me, at my workplace and also at home, but the Swedish lifestyle and design connection specifically imprinted on me during that time, because with this design choices, the space around us almost becomes like a vessel for unleashing our cognitive possibilities and being creative and productive.
I went to Sweden to do my postdoc because I knew the PI and he would open his lab there. So I waited and did a little transition postdoc in my lab at Max Planck before I then joined him when he opened his lab. That was really adventurous because when we arrived, the lab was established pretty quickly and then we were diving right into mitochondrial biology. What was also really exciting was that I could finish the studies that I brought from my PhD thesis. I finished it with a few experiments and then I also could publish those papers.
I worked on mitochondria, the so-called powerhouse of the cell, and these organelles are extremely complex. I enjoyed very much working there and being an expert after so many years, dedicating my scientific life to that organelle. Studying such a basic cellular function and finding new things was extremely pleasing.
When I think about what was the biggest learning from this 3.5 years in Sweden as a postdoc, I would say it's not something job related or partially job related, but it's more something personal. I noticed that being in a different country also keeps you isolated, right? So you will never 100% arrive in the culture. You can learn the language and have friends and a social life, but it's not the same as in the home country. So I learned to embrace more what my home country also offered. And I think this is a very positive thing, to have an idea of where you belong in this world. That doesn't mean that I could not imagine living abroad again, or at the time that I couldn't imagine still traveling the world, depending on where the next job would be. But it crystallized something in me that I knew at some point it would be awesome to settle down in Germany.
At some point, the question shifted from what is my next position to where do I actually want to build a life?
Now, science-wise, the biggest learning was that I'm really quite independent in my research, that I can cater to projects that are offered to me, that I work for, but I can also develop own projects. Also, what this postdoc offered me was the rest of the cell. Let me explain. I came from a Max Planck PhD thesis where I focused on a mitochondrial protein. So I worked on this mitochondrial protein, and this protein happened to travel between the cell nucleus and the mitochondria. I kind of was already working in the cell in different organelles, but still my topic was very mitochondrial biology related. At the time, there was an institute opening up, very new institute in the city where I'm living now, but they focused on the nucleus, on DNA repair, on DNA replication, on DNA damage, and everything in the nucleus. So my expertise didn't fit But in Sweden, my postdoc project dealt with a protein that happens to be in both organelles, in the mitochondria and in the nucleus. So this project allowed me to work also in the cell nucleus. And this in the end opened the doors for me coming back to the Rhine-Main area, where I wanted to go next.
Switching fields means letting go of being the expert and becoming a beginner again. And that is kind of the whole attitude a successful scientist has to embrace right from the beginning of a career. And yes, it is uncomfortable to let go of your knowledge and your expertise and start basically from scratch, but it also feels incredibly freeing. And it is also not true that we start from scratch, because whatever is the level of expertise that we reached, we gain competences. Apart from knowledge, this is technical skills, but also the skills how to explore a new field, how to read papers, how to dive into the unknown and making sense of it, pattern recognition, getting a structured overview of an area or a new field. So while it is uncomfortable and one feels lost in the beginning, it is very freeing to experience how far we have come from being a student over a PhD thesis into a postdoc. The main realization is also that the real skill is not the topic. Topics can be exchanged really for everybody. It is how we think as scientists. We think as people every day, right? I'm talking about critical thinking, explorative thinking, analytical, strategic thinking. And these types of thinking, these competences, are automatically trained by exploring the literature of a new field and becoming an expert. In the age of AI nowadays, and in my new job as a science educator, I think a lot about how I can keep this learning effect for the students, what we can do to embrace the new technologies that were not available at the time when I switched from the mitochondria into the nucleus, but nowadays they are available, and I'm very much for exploring and using these aids. However, we have to be really creative how we can stimulate these thinking processes that were stimulated in a completely different way when AI tools were not available at the time when I did my postdoc. Now, the thinking, the process, the exploration, this leads to growth in the end. And growth is what it's all about. Growth is what keeps us going. Growth is essential for humans, basically. That's my opinion. But in the job as a scientist especially, we need growth. Like an artist who has a phase and then walks into another phase of his artistic life, from blue to yellow to green, from landscape to portraiture. It is important to change to be able to grow. And that's why, looking back, having to switch fields, learning what's going on in the nucleus after being a mitochondrial expert was the best that could ever happen.
Now it's time for coffee. I'm drinking out of a Christmas cup that I brought from Sweden. And I like these a lot. Punschrulle or dammsugere, that means vacuum cleaner. They come with this green marzipan.
These Swedish coffee breaks, the Fika, it's not your usual coffee break. It is a pause, and not only a pause, but it is a collective pause, because it happens at the same time for most of the employees. And it's a type of social glue. It slows down the day, it gives time to discuss and think. And when I first encountered Fika, that was not when I did my postdoc, it was when I visited Sweden 2 years prior to starting my postdoc. I went to Gothenburg for a collaboration. That's also where I met my future postdoc PI. And In that lab, I've seen first what it means to have Fika. It doesn't necessarily mean to have to go to the coffee kitchen and sitting down. It can happen also in the hallway or at the office, but people stand together and they talk. And they can talk about different things, but they also can talk science. And some of the best ideas didn't happen at the bench, but over the coffee during Fika, in the hallway. And I was amazed. There is a true rhythm here. Work, pause, connect, repeat. This cultural snippet, the Fika, it connects people and it structures the workday. In between Fika, before and after Fika, there are little islands of productivity.
When I entered the building and when I got all the information about where I would work and I got my badge, access key and so on, a photo was taken for the badge. The first information I got, probably like many others going to Sweden, is that 2:30 there will be Fika. That means having a coffee, enjoying maybe something sweet, and most importantly, having Fika with the colleagues, so socializing. Even 2 times Fika a day, 10:30 and 2:30.
I did not expect it, but I'm saying it now on a video. Fika flattens hierarchies. I have rarely seen it that there were flat hierarchies. But during Fika in a Swedish institution, you sit down or you stand in the hallway, you talk, and you're just people. Also, the boss is just a person. Fika creates space for real conversations that would not happen in formal meetings.
Very sweet, but very good.
Maybe the sweetness of these typical Fika pastries is part of surviving the darkness. It's not just sugar, it's comfort, rhythm, and a bit of joy.
Fika was the one Swedish word that was very important, a cultural thing. And the second is lagom, which everyone that goes to Sweden also learns immediately, if you want or not. And that means not too good and not too bad, just lagom, just in the middle. So you also don't want to stand out, should all be in the middle of the curve, let's say. And that's an interesting concept, especially when you think in terms of career development and career path design, where you should stand out, because the postdoc phase is the phase where it's kind of decided if the academic career pathway is something for you or not. The choices that I made was I wanted to finish up the papers from my PhD. I did that. I wanted to explore more than mitochondria. I did that. And I attempted also to apply for funding for independence. For several reasons, this didn't happen. And then as I got a 3-year funding, it was clear when the end point would be reached. So I was already looking for the next step, which happened to be where I am now, the 3rd postdoc, or how I called myself from then on, when I was a scientist, a researcher. I wanted to go back to Germany, and in the Rhine-Main area, there were several options. This is what I aimed for. This is what I then did. I got invited for an interview, and finally I got the job. I already knew that I wanted to advertise myself a little bit with my researcher portfolio, but also with the ability to teach. And I was there at the right time because exactly this portfolio and person was searched for at the time. And that is how I came back to the Rhine-Main area.
Not everything worked out the way I planned it, and that was a hard but very important lesson. The dream was to acquire independent funding and go back to Germany or some other country and establish myself as a group leader. But sometimes things do not work out as planned or dreamed, and there are multiple variables that are responsible for that. In academia, the pressure is very high. Progress is not always visible or measurable short term, and one learns to adjust the definition of success.
Why this radical immersion? Why did I not go back home or visit family and friends or go on holiday for 3.5 years? First of all, I wasn't alone in Sweden. My husband joined me and we were together, so I had my family around me. Second, we chose not to go abroad because we wanted to fully immerse ourselves and to fully experience the Swedish lifestyle. We wanted to really live in the country, not just as visitors. Okay, we were 3.5 years visitors, but in these 3.5 years, we wanted to fully live there. That worked out great for us. We experienced all of these seasons. We experienced the darkness, we experienced the light, the midnight sun, and everything has a price. The first year it was exciting to have the midnight sun, and then also in winter the darkness. The second year it started to become hard on the body and the internal clock. I had more trouble with the midnight sun, I must say, and not so much with the darkness. Although it is hard to go to work and to have this daily rhythm when there is only 3-4 hours of daylight, if there is any daylight. It's very dark in October, November. December, when the snow comes, it's getting a little bit brighter, and when there is the war winter, so the spring winter, this time in between spring and end of winter, when the sun is out and everything is white with the snow reflecting, then it's getting a little bit more bright and you can enjoy the winter time. But in general, I had much more trouble with the midnight sun. And in year 3, I remember I had really sleepless nights. It's like in the film Insomnia, you know, when he tries to really close the curtains and tries to tape it and have a second layer of fabric to facilitate falling asleep, and it's just not working. And yeah, that's what happened to me too. So at some point it was just too bright and the bodily function was disturbed and you couldn't go to sleep anymore. Well, after a while necessarily, then I could sleep. That was hard. The midnight sun is something I'm not accustomed to, and that was the harder season for me.
I loved Sweden because of these soft transitions from autumn into winter. In autumn, I enjoyed bird photography in the backyard, and then when winter came softly with icy structures on the moss around the house, there was so much to see. And when the cold hit us, I was happy that I brought the right jacket for that purpose. I was growing up in the Black Forest, and when I was a child we had strong winters with heavy snow, and I missed walking through streets that were coated with snow, and I got this, the real winter, during these 3 years in Sweden. My Swedish postdoc shaped my research, yes, and it also changed how I thought about life and work. Some lessons only made sense years later. For example, choosing this fabric for my curtains. The time in Sweden became part of who I am as a scientist and as a person today, and I don't want to miss it for anything. I'm very grateful for the experiences abroad and how it influenced the life that I have now. These YearZeroVlogs, they give so much to me. Hopefully also a little bit of entertainment and information for you. If you watched until now, I would be happy if you leave a like, subscribe, and also a comment for the video. And I'm looking forward to the next YearZeroVlog, which is spanning the period of my scientific stay in the Rhine-Main area.